The emergency klaxon tore through Mars Command Station with an urgency that hadn't been heard in 7 years. Commander Tara Miles bolted upright in her quarters, disorientation quickly giving way to the practiced efficiency of 20 years in Earth's interstellar defense force. Her neural implant flashed the emergency code before her eyes: Xylaran Sector Priority Alpha. Civilian distress. She was moving before conscious thought fully formed her augmented muscles, compensating for Mars 0.38 G, as she sprinted through corridors toward the command center. 3 minutes. That's how long it had taken from alarm to arrival, still too slow by her standards, but faster than anyone else would manage. Status, she demanded, stepping onto the elevated platform, overlooking the planetary defense grid. The massive holotank at the center of the room showed the Xylaran cluster, 7 habitable worlds, orbiting twin stars, nearly 40 light-years from Earth. A pulsing red indicator blinked at the primary relay station. Incoming distress call from the Xylaran system. Commander Lieutenant Santos reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Governor Viren's authentication codes. Messages garbled due to long-range interference, but we've confirmed it's genuine. Tara leaned forward, brow furrowing. The Xylarans. They've been peaceful since first contact. Play the message. The holotank flickered, and a translucent figure materialized, a slender, almost ethereal being with 4 graceful limbs and large compound eyes that reflected light in rainbow patterns. Governor Viren of Xylar Prime. His normally iridescent skin appeared dull and ashen, his movements jerky with stress. Earth Command. This is Governor Viren of the Xylaran Confederation. We are under attack by forces identifying themselves as the Vorkesh Dominion. Static interrupted the transmission, distorting the alien's resonant voice. 3 of our outer worlds have been, more static, completely destroyed. Billions dead. They've bypassed our communication relays to the Council. We're next. Please. The message fragmented into incomprehensible noise before stabilizing again. Mercy. They show no mercy. Our people cannot fight. We need. The transmission cut, abruptly replaced by a simple text message on repeat. Help us. A heavy silence fell over the command center. The Xylarans were known throughout explored space as philosophers, artists, and scientists. Their physiology evolved on a low-gravity world with minimal environmental pressures. They'd never developed significant military capability because they'd never needed to. Their worlds were resource-poor, but culturally invaluable, hosting the largest living library of galactic knowledge outside the Council core. Signal analysis, Tara demanded. Based on transmission degradation and delay patterns, this message was sent just over 4 days ago. Commander Santos replied, his voice tight. 4 days. Tara felt her stomach drop. Even with their fastest ships, they'd be cutting it dangerously close. Put me through to Admiral Cortez, now. The holotank shifted, displaying the insignia of the 7th Fleet, before resolving into the weathered face of Admiral Elias Cortez. Even through the projection, his presence commanded attention, dark eyes that had seen too many battles, deep lines etched into brown skin that had weathered the radiation of a dozen different suns. Commander Miles, he acknowledged. I've just received the Xylaran message. Sir, requesting immediate deployment authorization for the 7th Fleet, Tara said without preamble. Based on transmission analysis, we have less than 20 hours before the attack reaches Xylar Prime. The Admiral's eyes narrowed. You understand the protocols, Commander. The Council has primary jurisdiction in the Xylaran sector. We're required to route this through diplomatic channels first. Tara didn't bother hiding her frustration. With respect, sir, by the time the Council convenes an emergency session, debates the merits of intervention, and drafts a response, the Xylarans will be extinct. These are the same Vorkesh who withdrew from the Council 3 cycles ago when sanctions were proposed for their strip mining of pre-industrial worlds. For a long moment, Cortez said nothing, and Tara feared she'd overstepped. Then his jaw tightened with resolve. Prep your fleet for immediate departure, Commander. Full combat loadout. I'll take responsibility for bypassing council authorization." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "Those bureaucrats have never seen a world burn. I have." Relief flooded through Tara. "Thank you, sir." "Don't thank me yet, Miles. I'm promoting you to acting captain for this mission. I'll join you on the flagship. We launch in 30 minutes. The holotank went dark, and Tara turned to her staff, already moving with renewed purpose. "You heard the Admiral. Full fleet mobilization condition Alpha. Priority target Xylar Prime 7th Fleet, to deploy in mass formation." She paused, only long enough to meet each of their eyes. "This isn't a peacekeeping mission, people. This is rescue and response against an enemy actively committing genocide. The Xylarans called Earth specifically because they know what humans are capable of." A grim smile touched her lips. "It's time to remind the galaxy why they call us Deathworlders." The command center erupted into controlled chaos as orders flashed across the system. Throughout Mars, orbit 27 warships of Earth's 7th Fleet began powering their fusion drives. Admiral Elias Cortez stood on the bridge of the EDF Intrepid, watching the blue-white glare of jump engines igniting across his fleet. The massive dreadnought hummed with power beneath his feet as final launch preparations completed around him. "Admiral," his executive officer, Commander Jackson, approached with a data tablet. "We've received a priority communication from Council headquarters. Councillor Trelvik is demanding we stand down until proper channels have been consulted." Cortez barely glanced at the message before handing the tablet back. "Send my regards to the councillor and inform him that we're experiencing communication difficulties that will unfortunately persist until our mission is complete." Jackson's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. "Understood, sir. Engineering reports a regrettable 7-day comms malfunction." 7 days should be sufficient," Cortez murmured. He turned his attention to the tactical display, where Captain Miles was coordinating the final formation. "Captain status report." Tara Miles straightened her newly affixed captain's insignia gleaming on her collar. "All ships report ready, Admiral. Jump calculations complete. 7th Fleet is formed into 3 battle groups as ordered Shield Spear and Reserve. Marines are prepping for potential ground deployment." Cortez nodded, studying the woman who'd served as his protégé for the past decade. She'd been a promising officer when he'd first noticed her brilliant tactician natural leader, but it was her moral compass that had impressed him most. In a military increasingly bound by political considerations, Tara Miles never lost sight of what they were fighting for. "Major Cho's combat report," he asked. "Her battalion is loaded and ready. Armored infantry full complement. They've been briefed on Xylaran physiology and environmental conditions." Tara hesitated. "Sir, if I may speak freely." "Always, Captain." "The casualty projections for the Xylarans are catastrophic. Even at maximum speed, we'll arrive with barely hours to spare. If the Vorkesh maintain their current pattern of attack, we estimate 80% of the Xylaran population on their homeworld will be dead before we can establish a defensive perimeter." Cortez's expression hardened. "Then we make sure the 20% survive, Captain, and we make the Vorkesh pay for every life they've taken." He turned to address the bridge crew. "This is why humanity built this fleet. Not for conquest, not for glory, but because we know what it means to fight for survival. The Xylarans can't defend themselves. We can." He nodded to the navigational officer. "Execute jump sequence. Maximum combat velocity." Throughout the fleet, gravitational distortion fields flared as 27 ships tore holes in space-time, vanishing into the artificial wormholes of humanity's most closely guarded technological advantage, the Hammond jump drive. As the stars blurred around them, Cortez found himself remembering the early days of human expansion into the galaxy. When Earth had first encountered alien civilizations, humanity had been shocked to discover they were considered terrifying by galactic standards. Deathworlders evolved on a high-gravity, high-radiation, predator-filled planet that would kill most sentient species within minutes of exposure. What humans considered normal, their dense musculature, redundant organs, aggressive immune systems, and capacity to withstand extreme conditions, was viewed with horror and fascination by species that had evolved in gentler environments. The psychological traits that accompanied their physiology, tenacity, adaptability, and the willingness to fight against overwhelming odds, had quickly earned humanity both respect and wariness among the Galactic Council. Now those same traits would determine whether an entire civilization lived or died. Transit time to Xylar Prime, 14 hours, 17 minutes, announced the navigation officer. Cortez settled into his command chair, allowing himself one moment of doubt before banishing it entirely. The Council would be furious. There would be consequences for this unilateral action. But he'd learned long ago that being able to face himself in the mirror mattered more than political expediency. Captain Miles assembled the command staff in the war room. It's time to plan our approach. In the Intrepid's tactical planning chamber, holographic displays projected the Xylaran system in exquisite detail. Captain Miles stood beside Admiral Cortez as senior officers gathered around the table. Among them was Major Lena Cho, commander of the 3rd Marine Expeditionary Unit, a compact woman whose deceptively slender frame contained combat-optimized musculature and neural enhancements. Latest intelligence suggests we're dealing with approximately 30 Vorkesh capital ships, supported by fighter squadrons and orbital platforms. Tara explained, manipulating the display to highlight enemy positions. Their technology appears comparable to our own, with 2 notable exceptions. Their shield systems are more advanced, but their kinetic defenses are significantly weaker. Typical of species from low-gravity environments, noted Lieutenant Raj Patel, the fleet's chief technical specialist. His fingers tapped rapidly on a datapad as he analyzed Vorkesh specifications. They prioritize energy weapons and defense against the same. Physical projectiles are considered primitive technology in most of the galaxy. Which gives us an advantage, Cortez said, nodding to Major Cho. Your assessment of ground conditions? The Marine commander stepped forward, her movements precise and economical. The Xylarans are ill-equipped for combat, Admiral. Average height 2 meters but mass only 35 kilograms. Their skeletal structure is partially cartilaginous, adapted for their 0.6 G environment. A single human could overpower dozens without breaking a sweat. She manipulated the hologram to display Xylaran cities, graceful, soaring structures that seem to defy gravity. Their architecture reflects their evolution, minimal use of metals, extensive use of grown materials. Beautiful, but highly vulnerable to bombardment, she frowned. My team's assessment is that standard evacuation protocols won't work here. The Xylarans will need physical assistance to reach safety at anything approaching acceptable speed. What about the Vorkesh ground forces? Tara asked. Based on limited records from previous encounters, the Vorkesh deploy mechanized infantry supported by drone swarms. Their troops won't have human-level strength, but their exoskeletons compensate. They're methodical, thorough, and Cho's expression darkened, show no distinction between military and civilian targets. Intelligence suggests they view the concept of non-combatants as a weakness to be exploited. Lieutenant Patel cleared his throat. There's something else you should know, Admiral. Analysis of the destruction pattern on the 3 outer Xylaran worlds suggests the Vorkesh aren't just conducting military strikes. They're systematically erasing all evidence of Xylaran civilization libraries, cultural centers, historical archives. This isn't just conquest. It's extinction. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. Why? Asked Commander Jackson. The Xylarans pose no threat. Their worlds have minimal strategic value. Knowledge is power, Cortez said quietly. The Xylaran archives contain records from thousands of civilizations across millions of years, including, I suspect, information the Vorkesh don't want found. He straightened, decision made. Captain Miles, configure the fleet for suppression tactics. I want those Vorkesh ships unable to continue bombardment within 5 minutes of our arrival. Major Cho, Your primary objective is securing evacuation zones for Xylaran civilians. Lieutenant Patel, why? Need you to prioritize their data repositories, anything we can preserve before the Vorkesh destroy it. He looked around the table, meeting each officer's gaze. We're not just saving lives today. We're saving memory, history, culture. Everything that makes a civilization worth preserving. As the briefing concluded, and officers dispersed to their duties, Cortez held Tara back with a gesture. Captain, there's something else. He lowered his voice. I've had a diplomatic back-channel monitoring council communications. There's been no emergency session called, no acknowledgement of the Xylaran distress call. Tara's brow furrowed. That's impossible. The Xylarans said they tried to contact the council directly before reaching out to Earth. Exactly. Cortez's expression was grim. Either someone intercepted those communications, or someone within the council is deliberately ignoring them. Either way, the implications are disturbing. You think there's council involvement in this attack? Tara asked, shock evident in her voice. I think we can't rule it out. He handed her a secure data chip. I've loaded specialized scanning protocols onto this. While we're engaging the Vorkesh, I want you to gather every piece of intelligence you can, ship identifiers, communication logs, anything that might tell us who they're really working for. Tara pocketed the chip, her expression hardening. Understood, Admiral. This stays between us for now, Captain. If there is corruption within the Council, we don't know how far it extends. She nodded once sharply. The truth won't stay buried, sir. Not if I have anything to say about it. That's counting on Miles. He offered a rare smile. Now let's go save a civilization. The Hammond jump concluded with mathematical precision, 27 Earth vessels emerging simultaneously into real space at the edge of the Xylaran system. Immediately, sensors painted a grim tactical picture. 15 Vorkesh capital ships in orbit around Xylar Prime, reported the tactical officer, her voice tight. They're conducting systematic bombardment of population centers. Atmospheric fires visible from orbit. Ground forces deployed across 3 continents. On the main view screen, the beautiful azure world of Xylar Prime burned black smoke, smearing across its surface like cancerous growths. Life sign readings, Cortez demanded. Scattered concentrations in underground structures and remote regions. Approximately 22 million survivors out of an estimated population of 130 million. Tara Miles felt her hands clench involuntarily. 108 million dead. More than had died in all of Earth's wars combined. No Vorkesh communication attempts, Admiral, reported the communications officer. They're aware of our arrival, but continuing bombardment operations. Cortez's expression could have been carved from stone. Then they've made their choice. Captain Miles, execute Plan Thunderbolt. Aye, sir. All ships combat formation Delta. Kinetic batteries to priority targets. Launch missile swarms full suppression pattern. Her voice was steady, despite the rage building inside her. Marine dropships prepare for hot insertion. Medical teams on standby. Across the fleet, railguns extended from armored housings, massive electromagnetic accelerators, capable of launching tungsten rods at a significant fraction of light speed. Unlike energy weapons, there was no way to detect them before impact, no elegant defense beyond raw armor. Target locked, announced weapons control. Firing solution complete. Fire, ordered Cortez. The Intrepid shuddered as its main battery discharged, followed in cascading sequence by the entire fleet. In space, there was no sound, no dramatic explosion, just the silent flash of metal, traveling at incomprehensible speed, crossing the distance to Vorkesh ships in seconds. The effect was devastating. Kinetic impactors tore through energy shields designed primarily to deflect directed energy weapons, punching through hull plating as if it were paper. 3 Vorkesh capital ships erupted in silent explosions, their reactors breached. 4 more listed heavily drive systems crippled. Direct hits across all designated targets, reported tactical. Enemy fleet is responding shields, reconfiguring to counter kinetic weapons. They adapt quickly, Tara noted, watching the tactical display. Launch second salvo before reconfiguration completes. Another volley of projectiles streaked across space, finding their marks with unerring precision. More Vorkesh ships disappeared from the tactical display, while others began evasive maneuvers. Enemy vessels breaking bombardment pattern moving to engage, reported the tactical officer. Incoming fire detected high-energy plasma weapons and gravitic torpedoes. Defensive pattern Epsilon, Cortez ordered calmly. Deploy countermeasures. Captain Miles, coordinate our fighter screen. The space between the fleets erupted with energy as Vorkesh weapons met human defenses. The Intrepid shuddered under the assault, artificial gravity fluctuating momentarily. Shields holding at 78% reported damage control. Minor systems damage on decks 12 through 15. Our fighter wings are engaging enemy intercept craft, Terra reported, watching as the smaller ships swarmed between the capital vessels. Dropship deployment window opening in 3 minutes. Major Cho reports Marine strike teams ready for insertion. Cortez studied the tactical display, noting how the Vorkesh fleet was regrouping, prioritizing defense over continued planetary bombardment. They're protecting something, he murmured. That flagship hasn't moved from its position despite being a prime target. Analyzing, Terra said, directing sensors toward the massive Vorkesh dreadnought at the center of their formation. Energy readings are unusual. They're maintaining a stable gravitational anomaly in their engineering section. Purpose unknown. Lieutenant Patel's voice came over the command channel. Admiral Captain, those readings match theoretical models for artificial singularity generation. If I'm right, they could be preparing to collapse Xylar's sun. The bridge fell silent for a heartbeat as the implications registered. A star killer, Cortez said quietly. They're not just destroying the Xylarans. They're erasing any evidence they ever existed. Terra's mind raced through tactical options. If we concentrate fire on the flagship, we risk triggering the device prematurely, Patel interrupted. These systems are delicate but catastrophic if damaged incorrectly. We need to board and disarm it. Cortez made his decision instantly. Major Cho, redirect your primary strike team to board the Vorkesh flagship. Lieutenant Patel, you're going with them. We need your expertise on that device. Captain Miles, continue fleet actions to draw fire away from the boarding party. Aye, sir, Terra acknowledged, already adjusting the battle plan. Deploying ECM packages to mask the boarding shuttle's approach. Fighter squadrons will provide diversion. On the tactical display, the human fleet advanced in practiced formation, creating a corridor of relative safety through which marine assault craft could approach their targets. The Vorkesh responded with increasing desperation, their initially methodical attack patterns deteriorating into frantic attempts to maintain their defensive perimeter. Something's off about their tactics, Cortez noted, watching the enemy movements. They're fighting like they're buying time, not trying to win. For the Starkiller, Terra suggested. Maybe, Cortez's eyes narrowed. Or for something else entirely. Major Lena Cho felt the assault shuttle buck violently as it evaded Vorkesh point defense fire. Around her, 30 Marines in powered combat armor checked weapons and systems with practiced efficiency. At her side, Lieutenant Raj Patel looked distinctly uncomfortable in his hastily fitted protective gear. First boarding action, Lieutenant, she asked, noting his white-knuckled grip on the restraint harness. Is it that obvious? He replied with a strained smile. Everyone's nervous their first time, she pointed to the grizzled sergeant across the compartment. See Santiago over there, 30 years in service, and he still throws up before every drop. It's not about not being scared. It's about doing the job anyway. Patel nodded, visibly steadying himself. I've studied the theoretical models for singularity containment, but I've never seen an actual device. If the Vorkesh have truly weaponized this technology, then you'll figure out how to shut it down, Cho said, with absolute confidence. That's why you're here, she addressed her troops. Listen up, our mission is straightforward but critical. We board the enemy flagship, secure a path to their engineering section, and allow Lieutenant Patel to neutralize a doomsday device. Xylaran civilization depends on our success. She pulled up a holographic schematic based on known Vorkesh vessel layouts. Standard 3-team approach. Alpha team creates entry and holds our extraction point. Beta team secures the path to the target. Delta team accompanies the lieutenant to the device and provides security while he works. Questions. A young corporal raised her hand. Rules of engagement, Major. The Vorkesh have already killed over 100 million civilians. They're building a weapon to destroy an entire star system. Cho's expression hardened. If it's Vorkesh and it's armed, you are cleared to eliminate the threat. If they surrender, secure them for intelligence gathering. But do not, I repeat, do not risk mission failure out of misplaced mercy for genocidal forces. The shuttle lurched again as it made its final approach. 30 seconds to contact, announced the pilot. Breach point identified. Minimal point defense in target sector. Stand ready, Cho ordered, unslinging her own weapon, a compact railgun capable of firing in vacuum or atmosphere. Remember your training. Remember what's at stake. The shuttle's magnetic grapples engaged with a shutter attaching to the hull of the massive Vorkesh flagship. Breaching charges deployed, creating a controlled explosion that vaporized a section of the enemy vessel's outer armor. Breach successful, reported the shuttle's AI. Atmospheric integrity confirmed beyond entry point. Alpha team go, Cho ordered. Marines flowed through the breach with practiced precision, securing the immediate area as the rest of the force followed. The interior of the Vorkesh ship was austere, all functionality, with minimal aesthetic consideration, a sharp contrast to the artistic sensibilities of their Xylaran victims. Clear, reported the Alpha team leader. Minimal resistance encountered. 2 Vorkesh security personnel neutralized. Cho motioned to her teams. Beta team advance. Delta with me and the lieutenant. Move out. They progressed through dimly lit corridors, encountering sporadic resistance that was quickly overwhelmed by superior human combat capability. The Vorkesh, evolved in a lower gravity environment like most galactic species, stood little chance in direct confrontation despite their technological advantages. This is too easy, muttered Sergeant Santiago, covering their flank. Where's their main security force? As if in answer, alarms began blaring throughout the ship lights, shifting to a pulsing crimson. They've isolated our position, Cho said, checking her tactical display. Beta team expect heavy resistance at Junction 17. Delta, we're changing route auxiliary corridor to avoid main defensive concentrations. They doubled their pace, guided by Patel's analysis of power conduits, leading to the suspected location of the Singularity device. As predicted, sounds of intense fighting echoed from the direction of Beta team's advance, the distinctive crack of human railguns mixing with the higher-pitched whine of Vorkesh energy weapons. Beta team engaging superior forces, came the tense report over the comm. Holding position, but unable to advance further. Understood. Maintain containment, Cho replied. Delta new route confirmed. They diverted through narrower maintenance passages, encountering less resistance, but making slower progress. Eventually, they reached a heavily secured bulkhead, marked with warning symbols in the Vorkesh language. This is it, Patel said, scanning the door with his equipment. Massive energy readings consistent with a contained gravitational anomaly. The control systems should be inside. Breaching charges, Cho ordered. Her Marines placed shaped explosives at strategic points on the door, then took defensive positions. Fire in the hole, announced the demolition specialist, triggering the charges. The reinforced door buckled inward, and Delta teams surged through the opening, weapons ready. Inside was a vast chamber, dominated by a central column of swirling dark energy, suspended in a complex containment field. Around it, several Vorkesh technicians worked at control stations, while armed guards turned in surprise at the human intrusion. Secure the room, Cho ordered. The firefight was brief, but intense. Human Marines, with their superior strength and reaction times, quickly overcame the Vorkesh defenders. Though not without cost, 2 soldiers fell to energy blasts before the last enemy was neutralized. Room secure, reported Santiago, already attending to the wounded. 4 casualties, 2 critical. Patel rushed to the central control console, eyes widening as he took in the displays. This is incredible technology. They've created a stable micro-singularity and developed a method to release it in a controlled manner. His expression darkened. When deployed, it would create a cascading reaction in the stellar core, causing it to collapse within hours. "Can you disable it?" Cho asked, positioning her remaining troops to defend the entrances. "I believe so, but it's not just a matter of shutting it down." Patel's fingers flew across the alien interface, his neural implants helping translate the Vorkesh control systems. "The sequence has already been initiated. It's on a countdown." "How long?" 6 hours, 17 minutes until deployment. Cho relayed this information to Fleet Command while Patel worked. Minutes later, Captain Miles' voice came through their comms. "Major, we've discovered something you need to know. We've intercepted and decoded Vorkesh communications. This operation isn't just their initiative, they're operating under direct orders from someone within the Galactic Council's Special Oversight Division." Cho felt a cold sensation in the pit of her stomach. "The Council ordered genocide?" "Not the full Council," Miles clarified. "A black operations group within it, designated Resource Allocation Committee. We're still piecing together the details, but it appears they've been sanctioning cleansing operations against species deemed economically non-viable for several years." "The Xylarans aren't the first," Patel said, quietly, looking up from his work. "There are records here, operational logs of previous extinctions, all approved by this committee. 7 species in the past decade, all erased so completely, most of the galaxy never even knew they existed." Cho's hand tightened on her weapon. "Can you download those records?" "Already doing it," Patel confirmed, connecting a data module to the Vorkesh system. "But there's more. I've found coordinates for a control facility. It's not here. It's on a moon in the outer system. That's where the final activation sequence originates." "Captain Miles, are you getting this?" Cho asked. "Affirmative, Major. Admiral Cortez is redirecting resources to investigate the moon base immediately. Your primary objective remains disabling that device." "Understood." Cho turned to Patel. "How's it coming, Lieutenant?" He frowned in concentration. "I've isolated the containment protocols and created a feedback loop that should prevent deployment, but I can't fully deactivate it from here. The moon base holds the master controls." He looked up, determination in his eyes. "But I can buy us time. Lots of time." "Do it," she ordered. As Patel worked, Cho received updates from the broader battle. Human forces had established superiority in orbit, though at significant cost. On the surface, Marine units were evacuating Xylaran survivors to secure zones and repelling Vorkesh ground forces. The tide was turning, but the discovery of Council involvement changed everything about the mission's political implications. "It's done," Patel finally announced. "I've reconfigured the deployment sequence. If anyone tries to activate it remotely, it will initiate a containment collapse that destroys only this ship, not the Star." "Good work, Lieutenant." Cho contacted the fleet. "Captain device is neutralized as a system-wide threat, awaiting extraction orders." "Negative on extraction, Major," came the unexpected reply. "Admiral Cortez wants your team to join the assault on the moon base. This goes all the way to the top, and we need hard evidence of Council involvement to prevent this from happening again." Cho glanced at her team, bloodied, battle-worn, but still combat effective. "Understood, Captain. Delta Team will proceed to secondary objective." As they fought their way back to their shuttle, Cho found herself reevaluating everything she'd been taught about the Galactic Order. The Galactic Council's supposed guarantors of peace and cooperation had sanctioned the annihilation of entire civilizations. How many more would die if they weren't stopped? The answer, she decided, was none. Not while humanity had the power to prevent it. Captain Tara Miles stood on the bridge of the Intrepid watching as the tactical situation evolved. The main Vorkesh fleet had been decimated with surviving vessels, either disabled or retreating to the system's edge. Human casualties had been significant, But acceptable. 3 destroyers lost, multiple ships damaged, but operational. On the ground, the situation was grimmer. Despite the rapid response, nearly 85% of the Xylaran population had been lost, with millions more injured or displaced. The survivors were being gathered in secure zones under human protection, but the scale of the tragedy was almost incomprehensible. "Captain," her communications officer called. "We're receiving a transmission from the Xylaran emergency government. Governor Viren is requesting to speak with Admiral Cortez." "Put it through to the main screen," she ordered. The view screen shifted to show Governor Viren looking even more frail than in his recorded message. Behind him, Xylaran medical personnel tended to wounded civilians in what appeared to be an underground shelter. "Governor," Terra acknowledged. "Admiral Cortez is currently coordinating our assault on the Vorkesh control facility. I'm Captain Miles, his second-in-command." "Captain." Viren's multifaceted eyes reflected the dim light in prismatic patterns. "On behalf of what remains of my people, I extend our deepest gratitude. Without Earth's intervention, we would now be extinct." Terra nodded solemnly. "I only wish we could have arrived sooner, Governor." "You came when no one else would, Captain. That is what shall be remembered." The alien leader's voice took on a formal cadence. "We have received reports of Council involvement in this atrocity. Is this confirmed?" "We're gathering conclusive evidence now, Governor. Preliminary findings suggest elements within the Council's Special Oversight Division authorized this operation." Viren's normally melodious voice hardened. "Then the corruption runs deeper than we feared. For decades, we have documented Council decisions that systematically disadvantaged non-resource-rich worlds. When we announced our intention to publish our findings," he gestured to the destruction around him. "This was their answer. The archives," Terra realized. "That's why they targeted your data repositories first." "Yes. We are a species of historians, Captain. Our greatest contribution to galactic society has been the preservation of knowledge others would prefer forgotten." A sound like wind through crystal chimes emanated from the alien. What humans had learned was the Xylaran expression of bitter irony. "It seems some consider that contribution a threat. Governor Viren Admiral Cortez intends to present evidence of this conspiracy to the full Galactic Council. With your testimony..." "My testimony will be given," Viren interrupted. "But you must understand, even with evidence, powerful interests will resist accountability. The Council has grown complacent, dominated by worlds that benefit from the current order." His multifaceted eyes seemed to look through her. "Humanity is young among the stars, Captain. You have not yet learned to accept injustice as inevitable." "And we don't intend to start," Terra replied firmly. A faint indication of what might have been a smile appeared on Viren's alien features. "That is why we called Earth when all seemed lost. Your reputation precedes you. Deathworlders evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient beings. But it is not your physical strength that makes humanity remarkable. It is your refusal to accept that might makes right." The conversation was interrupted by a priority alert. "Captain," reported the tactical officer, "we're detecting energy signatures from the moon base consistent with a solar destabilization attempt. They're trying to activate the device remotely." Terra's eyes widened. "Governor, I must attend to this. We'll continue our discussion once the threat is neutralized." "Of course, Captain. We shall await word of your success." As the transmission ended, Terra turned her full attention to the tactical display, where a small moon at the system's edge now glowed with unusual energy patterns. "Status of Admiral Cortez's assault team. They've established a beachhead but are encountering heavy resistance," reported Commander Jackson. "The facility appears to house more than just Vorkesh personnel. We're detecting Council security forces and automated defense systems." Lieutenant Patel's voice came through the command channel. "Captain, if they're attempting remote activation, they're in for a surprise. My modifications to the device should cause a localized containment failure on the flagship, only not a system-wide event. But that still leaves the control facility intact." Understood, Lieutenant. Tara studied the tactical options, then made her decision. Commander Jackson, prepare a precision strike package for the lunar facility. Kinetic impactors targeted to disable their power generation and communication arrays only. That's risky with our people on the ground, Jackson noted. It's riskier to let those controllers keep trying to destroy the system, Tara countered. Program the strikes to avoid Admiral Cortez's insertion points. They need a distraction anyway. As orders were relayed and weapons prepared, Tara felt a moment of profound clarity. The comfortable narratives she'd been taught about the Galactic Council as a force for stability and peace had been shattered. In their place stood an uncomfortable truth power, unchecked by moral constraint, would always trend toward tyranny regardless of species or civilization. Kinetic strike package ready, Captain, announced weapons control. Execute, she ordered. Across space, precisely calculated, tungsten rods accelerated toward the lunar facility, their trajectories designed to create maximum disruption with minimal risk to friendly forces. On the tactical display, Tara watched as they impacted in sequence power systems. First, then communications arrays, followed by defensive emplacements. Direct hits on all targets, confirmed tactical. Enemy facility power output dropping by 70%. Defense grid offline. Admiral Cortez reports the distraction worked perfectly. Added communications. His forces are advancing to the central control complex. Tara allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction before returning to the broader strategic situation. With the immediate threat to the star system neutralized, the next phase would be even more challenging, holding the corrupt elements of the Galactic Council accountable. Commander Jackson, have our intelligence teams compile all evidence of Council involvement in the Xylaran genocide. I want it secured and duplicated across multiple systems. Already in progress, Captain. Good. And prepare a demonstration package, visuals of the destruction survivor testimonies, recovered Vorkesh communication logs. The kind of evidence that can't be dismissed or buried in committee. As her orders were carried out, Tara turned her attention to the planet below, where the survivors of a once thriving civilization now faced the daunting task of rebuilding from near extinction. Earth would help them, of course. But more importantly, Earth would ensure those responsible faced consequences, regardless of their position or power. It was the human way. And perhaps she thought that was exactly what the galaxy needed right now. Admiral Elias Cortez moved with practiced caution through the corridors of the lunar control facility, his personal shield generator deflecting occasional energy blasts from retreating defenders. Around him, a mixed force of veteran Marines and special operations personnel secured each section methodically. Admiral called Lieutenant Commander Wei, his tactical specialist. We've identified the main control center. Heavy security presence detected. And sir, they're not all Vorkesh. Scans indicate representatives from at least 3 Council species. Confirmation at last, Cortez murmured. Prepare for breach non-lethal protocols where possible. We need prisoners for questioning. As his forces moved into position, Cortez considered the unprecedented situation they faced. Direct confrontation with Galactic Council personnel, even those operating outside official sanction, would have diplomatic repercussions that would reverberate for decades. But allowing genocide to go unpunished was not an option he could live with. Breach team in position, Admiral, reported Major Dawson, the operations ground commander. On your order. Execute, Cortez said simply. The reinforced doors to the control center exploded inward, followed immediately by neural disruptors, non-lethal devices that temporarily overwhelmed nervous systems, regardless of alien physiology. Human forces surged through the opening weapons trained on the occupants. Inside, Cortez found exactly what he'd feared. Alongside Vorkesh operators stood representatives from 3 prominent Council worlds, the insectoid Klarak, the amphibious Mendari, and most damning of all, a high-ranking Arcturian whose species held the current Council chairmanship. Secure them all, Cortez ordered. Careful with the Mendari, they require high humidity. As his troops carried out the arrests, Cortez approached the central control platform, where displays still showed the failed attempt to trigger the stellar collapse device. An older Arcturian in the elaborate robes of a council overseer glared at him with compound eyes that reflected Cortez's image in countless facets. "You have committed an act of war, human," the Arcturian stated, mandibles clicking in agitation. "The Council will not tolerate this interference in authorized resource management operations." Resource management. Cortez's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you call the extermination of an entire species?" "The Xylarans are economically non-viable," the Arcturian replied dismissively. "Their worlds consume Council resources while contributing negligible value. The committee determined their space could be more productively utilized by developing species." One of Cortez's Marines made a sound of disgust. "They're talking about people like their inventory." "That's exactly what they're doing, Sergeant," Cortez said, never taking his eyes off the overseer. Calculating lives against balance sheets, he stepped closer to the alien dignitary. "Tell me, Overseer, was this sanctioned by the full Council, or just your select committee?" The alien's hesitation told Cortez everything he needed to know. "Operational security requires compartmentalized authorization," the Overseer finally said. "The Resource Allocation Committee has broad discretionary powers. Broad enough to commit genocide without oversight." Cortez turned to his communications officer. "Connect me to the Intrepid. Priority channel to Captain Miles." Within moments, Tara's face appeared on a nearby screen. "Admiral, I see you've found our conspiracy." "And more, Captain. We've secured the facility and taken several high-ranking Council officials into custody. They've all but admitted to orchestrating the Xylaran genocide, and based on records here, at least 6 previous extinctions." Tara's expression hardened. "The evidence is conclusive, sir. Data recovered from both the flagship and this facility establishes a clear chain of command, leading directly to the Resource Allocation Committee. Vorkesh Communications confirmed they were operating as paid contractors. Paid with what Cortez demanded. Mining rights, Admiral. Once the Xylaran population was eliminated, the Vorkesh would receive exclusive development access to these worlds for 50 years. The Arcturian Overseer maintained his arrogant demeanor, despite being restrained. "You understand nothing, human. The galaxy operates on efficiency and return on investment. Some species contribute, others merely consume. The strong make way for the strong. It is the natural order." "Not while we're around," Cortez replied coldly. He turned back to the screen. "Captain Miles, transmit all evidence we've gathered to Earth. Command the Xylaran Provisional Government, and most importantly to every member world of the Galactic Council simultaneously. Full distribution, unredacted." "Admiral," the Overseer hissed, mandibles clicking rapidly in distress. "You cannot. The economic disruption alone would force accountability," Cortez interrupted. "Something your committee has clearly avoided for too long." He nodded to his security team. "Take them to the transport. They'll stand trial for their crimes publicly, transparently, with all evidence presented." As the prisoners were led away, Cortez turned his attention to securing the facility. The technical teams were already downloading all available data, preserving the evidence of a conspiracy that stretched back decades. "Sir," called Lieutenant Commander Wei, examining a secure terminal. "You need to see this." Cortez joined him, studying the display with growing horror. "A targeting list." "Yes, Admiral. 27 species marked for resource reclamation over the next 15 years. All non-industrial civilizations with minimal defensive capability. The Xylarans were just the current target." Cortez's jaw tightened. "Download everything. Every name, every plan, every authorization signature." He straightened, decision made. "And prepare charges to destroy this facility once we've evacuated. I don't want a single piece of this technology surviving." As his orders were carried out, Cortez found himself reflecting on humanity's place in the galaxy. They had joined the interstellar community less than 50 years ago, hailed as a promising young species despite their intimidating physical capabilities. The term Deathworlders, had initially been used with a mixture of fear and respect acknowledgement that humans had evolved in conditions that would kill most sentient life. Now that term would take on new meaning, not just as warriors born from a harsh world, but as protectors willing to stand against injustice regardless of its source. Admiral Wei reported, "Data extraction complete. Demolition charges set. We're ready for evacuation." Cortez took one last look around the facility that had orchestrated the deaths of billions. "Let's go home, Commander. We have a reckoning to deliver." In the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Delegates from 200-member worlds shouted over one another as evidence of the Resource Allocation Committee's atrocities played on massive displays throughout the chamber. Images of devastated Xylaran cities, intercepted communications, authorizing cleansing operations, and facility logs documenting previous extinctions scrolled in relentless sequence. At the center of the storm stood Admiral Elias Cortez, flanked by Captain Tara Miles and Governor Viren of the Xylarans. Before them, the council chairperson, a venerable Talarian with flowing tendrils that reflected their emotional state, struggled to maintain order. "This emergency session will come to order." The chairperson's amplified voice finally cut through the tumult. "We will proceed with structured deliberation, or I will clear this chamber." As the assembly grudgingly quieted, the chairperson addressed Cortez directly. "Admiral, while the evidence you have presented is disturbing, your unilateral military action against council personnel constitutes a serious breach of protocol. You must understand." "With respect, Chairperson," Cortez interrupted, his voice level, but unyielding. "Protocol became irrelevant the moment council officials authorized genocide. My forces prevented the extinction of an entire civilization, a civilization that had specifically reached out to the council for help and been deliberately ignored. The Resource Allocation Committee operated without full council authorization," protested a representative from the mercantile worlds. "You cannot hold the entire council responsible for the actions of a few." "Perhaps not," Tara said, stepping forward. "But we can hold the council responsible for creating a system where such actions could occur without oversight, where civilization's worth is measured solely by economic output, where species can be erased if they occupy valuable real estate." She gestured to the displays where the list of targeted species now appeared. 27 civilizations marked for extinction, worlds whose only crime was evolving in resource-rich systems without developing the military capability to defend themselves. Governor Viren moved to the speaking platform, his frail form commanding unexpected attention as he addressed the assembly in the formal language of council proceedings. "My people have served as the galaxy's historians for 50,000 years." His resonant voice echoed through the chamber. "We have witnessed the rise and fall of empires, the birth and death of civilizations. And never have we observed such calculated cruelty disguised as administrative efficiency." He gestured with graceful limbs to the scattered representatives. "The Xylaran archives contain the complete cultural heritage of 17 species that no longer exist. We preserve their art, their philosophy, their discoveries, treasures that cannot be measured in resource credits or development rights. This council was founded to protect such diversity, not to cull it for profit." The hall fell silent as the weight of his words settled over the assembly. Then, one by one, representatives began to rise, first from the academic worlds, then the Democratic Alliance, followed by the Frontier Compact. The delegation from Altair calls for an immediate vote of no confidence in the current council leadership structure, announced an elderly representative, and for the establishment of an independent investigation into all Resource Allocation Committee activities. "The Frontier Compact seconds this motion," added another delegate, "and further calls for reparations to the Xylaran people." As more delegations joined the chorus, the chairperson's tendrils flushed dark with emotion. "It seems the will of the Assembly is clear. We shall proceed with an immediate vote." The subsequent proceedings moved with unprecedented speed by council standards. By a margin of 173 to 27, the Assembly voted to dissolve the current Council leadership, establish a transparent investigation, and create new protocols for resource allocation that prioritized cultural preservation alongside economic factors. As the formal votes concluded, Cortés found himself approached by the representative from Altair, an ancient civilization known for its philosophical traditions. "Admiral," the alien said quietly, "you have shaken the foundations of our complacency today. Many of us had grown too comfortable with administrative abstractions that distanced us from the consequences of our decisions." She bowed slightly. "Humanity has proven itself not just physically formidable, but morally necessary to this council." Cortés nodded in acknowledgement. "We came to the stars hoping to find wisdom beyond our own delegate. Instead, we found that some principles must be carried within, regardless of how far we travel." As delegates dispersed to begin the long process of reform, Tara joined Cortés and Governor Viren at the central platform. "It's a beginning," she said cautiously, "but there will be resistance. The commercial interests that benefited from these reclamations won't surrender their influence easily." "No," agreed Viren, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the chamber's lights. "But they will now operate in daylight rather than shadow. And they have learned something important today, that economic calculus must account for the Deathworlder variable." "The Deathworlder variable?" Cortés asked with a raised eyebrow. "Your unpredictability," Viren explained. "Your refusal to accept that might makes right, that efficiency justifies cruelty. Most species evolve toward pragmatic self-interest. Humanity seems to have evolved toward principled intervention, even at personal cost." He gestured to the now empty council seats where the most powerful civilizations in known space had sat. "They feared your physical capabilities when you first joined the galactic community. Now they will fear something far more destabilizing to their comfortable order, your moral certainty." As they prepared to depart the chamber, Tara's communication device signaled a priority message from Earth Command. She reviewed it quickly, then showed it to Cortés. "The 7th Fleet is being permanently reassigned," she said with a smile. "We're to establish a rapid response force for emergencies throughout Council space, with particular attention to non-industrial worlds." Cortés nodded, satisfaction evident in his expression. "A shield fleet. Earth is making its position clear. This kind of atrocity won't be tolerated again, not while we have ships that can fly and soldiers who can fight." "It's more than that," Tara said thoughtfully. "It's a declaration that power comes with responsibility. That strength exists to protect, not to dominate." As they left the council chambers, they passed a group of Xyloran survivors who had traveled to witness the proceedings. One approached Governor Viren, relaying a message in their melodious language. "What did they say?" Cortés asked. Viren's alien features formed what humans had learned to recognize as a smile. "They say that in our new historical archives, humans will be recorded not as Deathworlders, but as the shield of the innocent. I believe it is an appropriate designation." Looking at the fragile aliens his forces had saved from extinction, Cortés found himself thinking of Earth, of oceans and mountains and forests that had shaped a species tough enough to survive their rigors. Of predators that had taught humans vigilance of natural disasters, that had taught them resilience of competition, that had taught them innovation. All of it preparation for this moment, for the responsibility of standing between the defenseless and those who would exploit them. "The shield of the innocent," he repeated quietly. "I can think of no higher honor." As Earth's representatives departed with their Xyloran allies, word of what had transpired spread across subspace communications to every corner of the galaxy. On countless worlds, the message was received with varying reactions: relief among vulnerable species, apprehension among power brokers, calculation among military strategists. But on one point, all agreed the galaxy had changed. The Deathworlders had drawn a line that could not be crossed without consequence. And whether welcomed or feared, That certainty brought a new stability to a civilization that had lost its moral compass in the comfortable darkness of bureaucratic efficiency. The humans had arrived, and they had brought with them something more dangerous than their physical capabilities, more disruptive than their technology. They had brought justice.